Okay, so we're still upside down, and you can see that we tried to match the height. Go back over because it's very easy to miss. Did you put one higher than it should have been? And you can correct that now and make sure that everything's pretty much the same size. So we're still upside down here. I'm going to come right into this brown, and I'm going to, where that shoreline is here, I'm going to lighten it up a little so there's a disconnect between, like these two trees kind of grew into each other right on the landmass there, and we don't want that. That wouldn't make sense. So go ahead and clean up that. And that looks good. I'm going to go ahead and turn the painting now and see how I'm comfortable with that. I think I am. I'm going to wipe off the brush. And this is the first time we're going to actually wash our brush. So we're going to use our water, swish it around really good. Make sure that you dry the brush pretty well. I mean, it's going to have some moisture in it for sure. We're not drying it entirely, but we don't want any runny water coming out of this brush when we go to do the water lines. So for our water lines, I'm going back to this palette here because we still have white on that. And it's mixed with a little blue, but that is actually very nice and will end up being very appropriate. So I'm tapping the blade of the small brush right into the white. And you want to use it just on the edge. You don't want big, wide water lines. So there's many ways to do this. You can just tap. You can tap and pull. And you want them all to be sort of staggered and inconsistent. But what you do want is for them mostly to be going side to side. You do not want any of them up and down. For the most part, it's just got to go up and down. I mean, side to side. Going right over that, cutting into it. And we're making make it look like placid, glassy looking water, but there's not too much movement. Maybe the wind's blowing on it a little bit and creating a little bit of a ripple, but not too much, really. And you might want a little bit of foam up in your shoreline here. You can create that by just tapping. You want that to be vague also, not really very harsh. Because remember, this is sort of at a distance here, so you want it to look as realistic as can be. I'm tapping in the foam along the base. And you can take some water lines farther out. The drier the brush, the better for these water lines. For a little bonus, it's not in the directions, but you can put a little bit of a low light as well by mixing some of that darker blue, black, blue and a little white. Try putting in some low lights, but you want to keep it pretty light brush with that. And a little bit of shading that's going on with that. That looks pretty. Gives it a richer look. Make sure you hit the sides when you're doing this. So go ahead and do that, and we'll be back. Okay, we're back. So we're going to begin with our large brush. We're going to wipe it off a little bit, not a whole lot. Come right into this khaki color, put a little bit of green in there, creating that mossy khaki green color that we have. And we're going to just tap this in here. We're really not trying to be super precise here, just tapping color into that. Same as over here, tapping. It's okay if we're a little messy. You'll see why we're going to use that paint to create some grasses in a moment. So now to create our grasses, we're going to just use again the blade, the edge of the brush here. Use it like brushing straight up. Don't come from up to down because it won't look like grass. You see how we have this little point on here? If I were to come from up to down, it would be thicker up here. So by brushing up and flinging up, it creates that lovely little point that grasses have. And you want some of those grasses to overlap each other, make it look as natural as possible. And some of these we're going to tap, and some of them we're going to brush because we want to have a variation of different things going on here. We don't want it to be just a cookie cutter little thing. So here I'm doing a lot of tapping. It's kind of nice. It makes it look like there's some kind of other foliage going on, as you can see. And maybe I'll skip a space and maybe just kind of mess up that line. We don't want any straight lines like this to show. So we're going to mess it up. And that's why I was saying a moment ago that just slap it on there, because that will help facilitate where we're going with this. It'll just be a natural transition. I'm putting a few grasses up here as well. I'm coming right back into that darker green as well, and I'm going to put some variation in the color of the grasses as well. I think that's important to have a lot of different things going on here. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that shoreline right there. We're going to go with that. All right, we're going to be using our smaller flat brush again. We're wiping it off. And we're going to come into the dark brown now. So get your dark brown put onto your palette. And we're going to dip this in and make sure we got it loaded, the brush loaded on both sides. We're going to take this, it's going to be the center of the tree. We're going to come through through here, coming up all the way through the top. There we go. And might want to make it a little, whoops, that's a little too wide, but we're going to make it a little wider as we come down. There we go. And we're going to leave it at that. We're going to wipe off the brush. We're going to come into the dark green. And here we're zigzagging, we're tapping and zigzagging. There's no rhyme or reason to this. One thing is you don't want it perfectly the same on both sides, because nothing in nature is perfect. So, and I'm kind of zigzagging but pulling as I brush and tap. You just got to get a feel for it. We're going to come back and make it more solid. I'm just placing the boughs in there for now. And they come out a little farther as they come down towards the ground. But on this particular type, it's fairly consistent. A little bit wider at the bottom. We'll do the other side. So this is really just sort of a shadow of what tree is to come here, but that's going to be the base of it. Then I'm going to go back into the green, and I'm going to take out a lot of this center so you won't really see that trunk right there. You want to see little glimpses of it here and there, but we don't want to. You want some areas that are completely covered. The trunk is completely covered, and we're doing that with the dark green. So go ahead and glob it on there pretty thick so that it covers that trunk in areas. But remember to leave a little bit peeking through, because that would be what you'd see in nature. on some trees. Once you've got the framework of your tree, we're going to lighten it up a little bit with a little bit of our white. You can just take it from your other palette. So on my brush now, I've got a little brown, I've got a little green, and I'm going to take a little bit of white and make a softer form of green. You don't have to make the exact same shade as mine. It doesn't, it'll be your highlights. So we're putting in some little highlights, just tapping them in. Yeah, I'm happy with that. I'm going to put a few more grasses while I'm at it here on that shoreline. Use a little bit of this new color down in here to add even a third color, give it a little more variety. You can do the tapping thing that we've done. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, rock and roll. Here we go. All right, dipping into the brown. I've already wiped off the small brush and I'm dipping back into the brown. And we're going to make this tree that sits about right here. And we're going to do that by coming up all the way through the top and over the top. That's the trunk, and we're going to need to thicken it up at the bottom, coming in, tapering in as we come up. We're going to do it from the other side, just create a nice little arch over the trunk. Then we're going to go ahead and fill that in solid with the brown. Coming back to the brown, we're going to take our first bough that's going to come about here. It's going to come here, over and up, off. And we're going to need to, of course, thicken it closer to the trunk. I need to make this a little thicker to support that. There we go. So now we're going to thicken up the first branch by coming in here, and it's gently like an arm. Just imagine it's like an arm, and it gets thinner as you go. And then take a minute and look. See, I've got some clump. It's kind of thicker there, and that's not how a tree would naturally be, so I've got to correct that, and it's okay. I can do that by making it a little wider. Make sure the branch is never going to be thicker than the branch that it comes out of. That's really important, but you can always touch that up by making this a little wider as you go, and I'm going to need to make this branch a little wider here as I go. There, that's okay. That's the first branch. Make sure your trunk is wide enough to support that branch. Mine is just barely. I probably want to make it a little wider because that's the way trees work. They get thinner as they go up. So I'm going to take another one here maybe. And I always start them with just stick figures. And then tapering in, filling it in. We're going to have a lot of leaves on this particular tree. So you don't need a lot of branches, but you do need some, so just pour all those leaves. Everything kind of wides out from the tree. Put in some little twigs. Maybe there'd be one coming from the back side of the tree. Some of these branches should probably cross each other as well. I got those two crossing, and that's good. That's really enough for what our purposes are. Make sure most of your branches come off the top. And that's good for what we're doing here. Now I'm going to wipe off the brush again. And I'm going to come back into this khaki brown. And I'm going to pull from the side, just tapping and pulling. I'm going to soften that up a little bit too. Yeah, that's fine. Happy with that. Okay. Okay, we're gonna make a fresh blue now, or green rather. We're gonna wipe off our brush.